All right, guys, we have so much to touch upon today, but just before we get started here, just two quick announcements. The first one is thank you to Chexy for sponsoring this episode. Chexy helps you get credit card points on your rent or cash back. Click the first link down below in the description. Chexy, thank you so much for being a sponsor of our show. The second announcement is Brooke and I did a little bit of a rebrand. So we're trying to incorporate the economy and real estate all into one. When we first started this thing, I don't even know what we were doing, but we just came up with a quick name, just wanted to focus on real estate. But obviously things have grown to a place where we're having, political people on, and we're having economists on and different things like that. So we are now called the Canadian Economy and Estates Podcast. And yeah, we still sell real estate. We're still here if you guys need any help with that. But again, thanks again for supporting the show. And we are going to get into everything that happened. I don't know if you've been living under a rock or not, but Trump brought his tariffs in. It's a lot.
It was funny because like 2 days ago, he said they're pushed till April, right? So he kept pushing them back. And then all of a sudden they're here. Like, okay.
I don't know what triggered him. Yeah. I there was a point where I was like, I think I even posted this on our Instagram story. I'm like, he's just trolling us at this point. Like they're not coming. Like, I don't know what he's.
I think he had to just because people who like Trump, like know that he does what he says he's going to do. If he says something, he's going to do it. So that's a big
campaigned on it
marketing.
too.
Yeah.
Like we can't just sit here and be like, a lot of people were even up in arms about some of the Ukraine stuff, but like he campaigned that he wanted the war done. Like do we not think like some of this stuff was going to come true?
No, he's notorious for if he says something,
he's going to do it.
Yeah. And I don't think he wants to be known for, empty threats, right? Because Canada started saying, oh, he's never doing it.
Yeah.
So I don't think he wants that a part of his image at all. And that's why I kind of questioned it a little bit. It's like, why does he keep saying this and pushing it back? Like you were saying, trolling us because people aren't going to believe him the next time, like the boy who cried wolf kind of thing.
That theory. Yeah. So let me read it. Let me read like what's happening. And then I'll get you to read how Trudeau responded after.
Okay.
But there's a lot to go over. So as of March 4th, 2025, President Donald J. Trump has implemented tariffs on imports from Canada as part of a broader trade policy. Specifically, he imposed 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods entering the U.S., with a lower 10% tariff applied to Canadian energy resources, such as oil and natural gas. These tariffs took effect on March 4th, 2025, and a 1-month delay from their original planned start of February 1st, 2025 was paused to allow for negotiations. So yeah, basically like people are wondering like what a tariff is. It's a tax. It's a tax on a US company bringing in a good from another country to use to then sell to Americans. So really what he's campaigning on is what I think at this point is that he wants to bring more jobs and more business to the States.
He did say that Americans are going to face a little bit of trouble with this too, because obviously it's going to in turn affect them. Like inflation goes up, they have to pay it, right? If we're importing to them. So, because Canadians will factor that into the cost, right? Or it's split, or it will have an effect on Americans as an immediate effect, and whether long-term, if these stay, his vision is it does help American businesses and it does help Americans in the long run, but immediately Americans will feel it. I don't think that they're crazy happy about it.
And I don't think so either, but he might be right? Like it might get to the point where like the switch from Canada to the US is so simple for all these businesses, which is scary because that means we lose a lot of jobs.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because like that's our biggest market. There's going to be a ton of, and it's going to hurt the U.S. in the interim.
Yeah.
Even because, we put them on Mexico too. So I don't think Mexico's responded yet. But it's going to hurt the U.S. in the interim. But what does it mean long-term for the country? Does it mean more jobs, more American pride, more made in America kind of stuff? Potentially, maybe that's his ultimate goal. It's really hard because he keeps saying it's about fentanyl and border security and immigration. But it feels like there's something bigger here.
I think it's also to promote American businesses and domestic trade rather than international trade.
Yeah.
So I think there's a part of that as well, rather than just the fentanyl crisis at the borders, because essentially, how are the massive companies like the automotive and major companies that rely on trade with Canada, how are they responding to this? I'm sure they're not like, how does things come into effect and they just move forward? How does it get implemented even?
Yes, I was listening to this Andrew Chang on CBC talk about it, and he said like there's a few ways you deal with it, right? Like either the American company eats the cost, the Canadian company eats the cost because they believe it's short term and they don't want to lose their American buyer. Or they find like a middle ground
I think
and
there'll be
figure it
probably a
out.
middle ground, especially
Yeah.
if they know each other very well, massive trading partners, and have a good system going. Especially if both sides think that it's probably short term. If what he's saying is clean up your borders and these will go away, they'll probably both split it. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
probably not everyone, but I think
We'll
that would
see.
be the solution for a lot of major
Do you have the
companies that
notes in
rely
front of
on
you?
it.
There's
I
one.
do.
It just says Trudeau responds. So this is what Brooke's about to read is what Trudeau basically woke up today, had a press conference this morning, and this is what Trudeau said to Canadians to kind of alleviate some stress.
I saw his post too. I think that you're probably the right one. Okay, Trudeau responds. Canada responded to the Trump administration's imposition of tariffs on March 4th, 2025, with a swift and significant retaliatory measure. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a 25% tariff on $155 billion worth of U.S. goods exported to Canada. This response was structured in 2 phases. 1, immediate action. Starting on March 4th, 2025, Canada imposed tariffs on $30 billion of U.S. goods. This initial tranche targeted a range of American exports, though specific items were not exhaustively detailed in early reports. The focus was on goods that would exert economic pressure on the U.S. without immediately crippling Canadian supply chains. Number 2, phased escalation. The remaining $125 billion in tariffs is set to be implemented within 21 days by March 25th, 2025, unless negotiations resolve the dispute. This phased approach allows Canada to maintain leverage while signaling a willingness to escalate further if the U.S. does not reconsider its position. Trudeau framed the retaliation Jesus, as a defense of Canadian economic interests, particularly in response to the U.S. tariffs' stated aim of addressing illegal immigration and drug trafficking, issues Canada argues are not primarily its responsibility.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. So basically, like Trudeau came on, he was very much like, because obviously we've been very critical of Trudeau and everyone has, like his polls have been horrible. But just seeing him talk out there, I was almost like, oh my God, like where's this guy been for the past 9 years? Like where's this kind of love for Canada been all of a sudden? So I think he's just kind of on his way out, exit polls, and he's trying to set up the next Prime Minister of Canada. I guess some of the hard things that I kind of think about here with where we're at is that we have nobody sitting in Parliament right now. Like no one's working.
Yeah, have you seen all those posts where it's, everything that's happening and then a picture of our Parliament?
And it's just
and
no
it's
one's
empty.
in there. Yeah. Like it's just, it really makes you like scratch your head and why is Donald Trump doing these things? And it's like, well, like we're so exposed right now. Like no, we can't pass any bills. So some things that I were thinking of.
So what Trudeau just put into effect as of March 4th with that $30 billion, that is something that is a new, what you wouldn't call it a bill. What would you call it? Because
there's bills like, just as an example here, there's like a no new pipeline bill that the Liberals put in.
Right.
So, when all this climate change stuff and, they've been really, really big on it. But now it's like, holy, we need energy. Like we need to use our resources. This was a big mistake that put us back, 5 years or whatever. If you go to Parliament and you want to get that bill removed, because like we need to start moving, right? Like we can't just be like, oh, we're gonna hit back the US and like just sit here like ducks. We have to start doing stuff. So what in my head what was going on was, okay, let's remove let's get everyone back to Parliament and working. Let's have an election so we have people who we know are going to run the country for the next 4 years. Get rid of inter-provincial tariffs. Like how we still have tariffs on our own people. It's crazy. Like we're so mad at Trump, but like we're tariffing ourselves between provinces. Like let's get rid of that. Like how is that not gone already? And then let's,
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
And how do you figure out that it's existed? Because if I'm buying from a BC shop, I don't notice any tariffs.
Oh, it just gets passed on to you. Like at the end of the day,
paying the government.
Like if there's a certain good that one province makes, and like say you're in Ontario, you want to buy from another province like BC, and then you're just paying these taxes, and then it just ended up going to the consumer.
Ridiculous,
right? Or it doesn't create as many jobs, or what it might be. But I think that we have to like, okay, let's get rid of this pipeline ban or some sort of energy ban that we have, and we can create more jobs that way. Probably having no temporary workers or non-residents come into the country for the next little while because Canadians are going to need jobs.
Yeah.
Is probably a smart thing to talk about and debate in Parliament, which is not happening because we're prorogued.
Happening.
So, good thing is Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland is going to get in on the 9th.
Which is very soon.
It's soon. It's 5 days.
Yeah.
But, we've been these sitting ducks for so long. Like, I think people are tired of it.
What
so unless they call an
the
election,
Supreme Court?
didn't get through, I don't think.
Get through,
No.
All right.
So unless they call an election right away, because they have had a bump in the polls, which we talked about in the show is going to happen, anybody but Trudeau bump.
Yeah.
Then we have to wait to the 24th of March while Carney or Freeland, an unelected prime minister, let's call it how it is going to run the country until the 24th. Jagmeet Singh still says he's going to call non-confidence, but if he flips, we'll have an unelected prime minister till October. So there is that, which is not good.
Which is not good. No. And I don't know if he will flip just because of the backlash that he will feel. But he has his pension.
For sure.
Who's to say that, he's not incentivized?
I really honestly believe that the Liberals will call an election after the leader gets in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they honestly believe they probably have enough support where they can do a lot better than they were ever projected to do.
If he does well until October, why wouldn't they wait until they knew that there's a way better chance? Because right now, if the Liberals call an election, I really think as much as maybe the polls have increased and people that were Liberal that were jumping ship only because of Trudeau, anybody but Trudeau, maybe they've gotten some people back.
They need to get Jagmeet Singh back. And he said, because no matter what, it's either the 9th or the 24th, right?
Yeah.
Or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Unless
if he doesn't call
the one man.
September.
Who?
If Jagmeet Singh doesn't call an election.
On the 24th. So the one person they need to win over is Jagmeet, who said multiple times
that he's not.
It doesn't matter who it is, he's calling an election. He's actually written a note to Pierre Trudeau and the Québécois leader saying we need to resume Parliament ASAP so we can talk about these issues that we're about to face. So I think that Pierre had a good point saying that any money they make from tariffs, they should put back into the economy, create tax cuts, and or give it to EI for people who are experiencing short-term job loss. So, I mean, overall, like, I'm going to read some impacts here just in a second, but I think, and I really do hope that there can be a deal that can be made, that they can figure this out. Because I don't think long-term it's good for either economies. Like, I think if Can-Am, they work together. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like the president and the prime minister need to get along.
Oh, 100%.
And they're not. That's not happening right now.
Did you see his tweet? He said, Donald Trump declared a trade war. We are standing for our country. Like, it's just so.
And then, so Doug Ford was talking about stuff, and he was like, I'm going to cut off energy if I have to the U.S. Like, you can't. Like, I don't think you should be saying stuff like that. Like, I'm all Team Canada, trust me. The military will be on the border in 2 seconds being, you better turn that back on because it's still winter. And, Michigan and Minnesota need our energy. I don't think that's the right stance. Doug Ford, I think the LCBO is one of like the biggest purchasers of liquor in the world. Like, it's crazy. And it's $1 billion industry for the U.S. And they're getting rid of every U.S. company, seltzers, hard alcohol, wine off their shelves. So I think what that does in turn is it makes the senators and the political leaders of those certain states go to Donald and say, look, like, this is really hurting our business. Like, they're huge. Like, can we figure something out here?
He must have had like all of the retaliatory measures that Canada could and would implement laid out for him as, okay, if I do this, what is their chess move going to be? Like, this can't be a surprise to him. So he must have seen this coming. I don't think he's just throwing out empty threats and then imposing them, not knowing what could potentially come his way for him and Americans. So as much as it's bad, don't you figure that he would have seen these things coming, especially because the LCBO started doing that. So that was already kind of in play.
They started ripping, and then they started putting everything back on the shelf.
So he knew that was coming. So clearly it's a bigger play that he's trying to accomplish than these little things going back and forth in some businesses and industries getting hit. It's, for an overall change in what he wants to see, because he must have seen these things coming. It's not like he's like, oh, I put tariffs. Now they're taking this. Okay, let's take them off. Like, he has to have seen our retaliatory measures beforehand. Otherwise, he's just an idiot. So I don't think he's that.
Yeah.
That
I mean, he's the
stupid.
president of the biggest
I don't
economy
think
in
he's
the world.
that stupid
Yeah.
that he wouldn't have seen, okay, where does Canada kind of have our tail, where they can kind of hurt us back, where? And can we stomach that for, the greater picture of what he's trying to accomplish? And is that the border? Is it mainly that, or is it more of the domestic trade that he wants to see in, by domestic, by U.S., to improve their overall economy and, people's businesses and that sort of thing? Or is he just doing this and then, we retaliate and then he backs down? Because that would also look bad on him.
For sure. There's parts of me too, and it's like, if I'm Trump and I see Vancouver and drugs are legal there and the ports don't get scanned and, the trains don't get scanned enough, is that something where you're just like looking at a province, which is like a state there, and being like, why is there one province where drugs are legal? Like, do you think like
in all of BC are drugs legal?
Yeah, like you can I've seen
cocaine?
on Twitter, you can go and you can get drugs from like a vending machine. Street candy, we should say.
Is that real? People are just doing drugs and it's no cops.
Yeah, you can go to like, the idea is that the drugs are clean. That's the idea behind it. It's just, remember we had Bonnie on. I asked Bonnie, would you ever
how do you get clean?
So it's all tested. So the government provides tested cleaner drugs for people so they don't OD.
That hurts my brain.
It really hurts my brain too. And it's been going on for a long time in BC, right?
But isn't it just because there's a fentanyl crisis and an opioid crisis in BC, right? But then we're forgetting like there's all these other drugs, like stimulants, for example. Like, are they providing things like meth and cocaine and really, like, your drug of choice, whatever you want, we got it all?
It's essentially like, yes, like in a way, it's not like, yeah. The idea behind it is that we are helping people who are going to do the drugs anyway, but these drugs are going to be clean. But the thing with the drugs is that the harder they are, the better they are for the addict, right?
But yeah, so they were legalizing drug. I remember something like where instead of giving people fentanyl or heroin, for example, they're not giving heroin, they're giving things like hydromorph. And then the addicts take the hydromorph, they get addicted to hydromorph, and then they end up selling the hydromorph
because they want the better stuff.
Because they want the better stuff. But so I don't think that the government or whoever it is that's supplying hydromorph, for an example, is also supplying heroin, because even though heroin can be clean, it is super easy to overdose on heroin based on your dose amount, not necessarily the cleanliness of the drug.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Also, I think that like we need to get harder on crime too.
Yeah.
Like Canada needs like more strict jail. Like clearly people on bail, and like the Toronto Police Department has talked about it. It's not working. Like what we're doing isn't working. Like there's more break-ins. Like, there's so many security posts and security companies getting hired to like go up and down streets. Like clearly we have a bit of an issue here that we need to combat. So although I don't agree with what Trump's doing, I do think that Canada has let our economy slide, which is really, and obviously me and Brooke have spoken that we support Pierre and the Conservatives going forward, but everything that the Liberals are saying is what Pierre's been saying and his caucus has been saying for 2-3 years. Let's unleash energy. Let's get tougher on crime. Let's look at our borders. And, the Liberals and news media outlets said he was anti-environment and, all these things, right? And now you're using energy as a pawn in so much, I'm going to stop energy from going to the U.S. And I know Doug Ford's a conservative, but all these things is kind of like, even you and I have gotten to know energy so much more, and like how proud as Canadians we should be of our energy sector. Yeah.
100%. It's all ridiculous. And even just like the sentiment of Canada and the market, especially as realtors, it's crazy out there how the market is very slow. Like I always say, things still move, people still need to buy, sell, things happen in people's lives, but the sentiment out there is not Canada's not a happy.
No.
No, the sentiment has gone down how many points of just where the baseline averages of how people are feeling. Fear has skyrocketed among people, both financial fear. Obviously, it's tougher just to live day by day. People are living paycheck to paycheck, less proud to be a Canadian just with all of this. So, the more people I talk to, no matter what kind of walk of life they're from, whether they're a business person, whether they're, a doctor, wherever they're at, and I'm specifically speaking to the people that are around my area, which is the GTA. The sentiment kind of is the same, which is people are not happy and people want to change. So I don't think anything that the Liberals do, if Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland gets into power, whatever they say, I think people are just more like, I understand that they're a change from Trudeau, but I want a massive change. I want to go full.
I want a new cabinet. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So, obviously we were a real estate podcast when we started this thing. So the short-term impacts of what this could mean. So GDP contraction, the Bank of Canada is saying that we will have negative GDP going forward. So we will officially be in a recession. Like immigration can't mask it.
Recession last year. Remember that? Remember I called it and it wasn't in the news. It's like, hello.
Yeah. It was
3 months of negative GDP.
I think there was one positive month. Which or like it
2 months negative, one positive.
It was something like that. Yeah. So I can't remember something.
They don't call it a recession until you have 3 months consecutively of negative GDP.
I think it's two. Is it 2 quarters? I think it's 2 quarters of negative.
Okay, so
GDP.
6 months.
Yeah, I think it's 2 quarters.
Don't quote me. I'm not an economist.
You might have to fact check that.
I'll fact check it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Bank of Canada sees that our GDP will contract, and then that leads to unemployment. Job losses are a major concern, particularly in export-driven sectors like energy, manufacturing, and autos. So I would be looking at real estate markets, to tie this into real estate, that are heavy in that sector, who won't be able to pay their mortgages anymore. So that's an issue that I see, is that unemployment. Now, will the government step in and give them aid? Probably. So maybe it's kind of like a COVID relief fund, but that leads to our old friend inflation. So despite weaker demand, tariffs are expected to push up prices due to higher import costs and depreciating Canadian dollar. So forecasts suggest inflation could rise to 2.3%. So you need to get the this is the crazy thing again. You need to get the economy moving, so you're going to have to drop rates.
Yep.
But then inflation's probably going to go up because you've dropped rates.
Yeah.
And you have these import fees that need to get passed on somewhere.
It's all a balancing act.
The economy is a crazy thing.
It is. Putting out like a solution to one thing caused a problem over here. So it's forever a little balancing act. And people understand that. It's just like a solution over here created a massive problem over here. I think that there's a solution there, a massive problem. Like as long as it's like kind of measurable and all kind of under an umbrella where things aren't going crazy like they have been for a while, then it's okay if inflation ticks up a little bit and then comes in, that's normal for an economy.
For sure.
But
and I don't want to come out and make like any predictions on the real estate market. All I know is that prices are coming down, not everywhere. This is a blanket statement, but prices are coming down. Vacancies are going up for rental markets. Days on market are increasing. It should lead to a market where prices decline, not drop 20, 40, 50%. I don't know those things. I'm just saying
can be 1 to 2% like year over year. That can mean 5% in some areas, right?
Which, for a lot of people, it's not even keeping up with inflation. So, as an investment purpose, yes, you get to keep the house, you have principal pay down, but the 7 to 9% that we've seen for so long is probably not happening. We're probably going to see a bit of a rough market for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I wouldn't let that scare people either, because even if it goes, I don't see any sort of major drop like we did. Like things skyrocketed and then they came down 20 to 30%, and that was insanity. That was hundreds of thousands, right? Mm-hmm. But if we're talking 3 to 5%, and then a warmer month upticks 5%, and that's okay if it trades sideways, down 3, up 5, down 2, because we track it month over month and year over year.
Which is kind of, year over year is almost better. Like tracking things month over month. The thing that I like to look at is sales.
Yeah.
Like I like to look, because pricing is like, not like the stock market. You can't just sell your house like that.
Right. No, it's very true. And different months will, people are away in the summer. So prices, maybe a seller accepts something.
If me and my wife worked in the automotive sector in Ontario, would I go buy a house right now? No. I wouldn't. I'd probably not do
Right.
that.
And I think that's what's leaving people on the sidelines because they don't know how their jobs are going to be
Exactly.
affected. Right. So they don't want to go take on this massive mortgage.
Which is good. I wouldn't advise someone to do that. If you're worried about you losing your job, I would not jump into a house right now. It's honest
I
truth.
wonder how banks are like screening people with
Probably
these
not
tariffs,
taking
because
that
if they get an
into account.
applicant, I don't think they're taking it into account.
No, they
But
wouldn't.
there has to be some sort of communication between the head people at the banks where it's like, hey, if we think an industry is going to be hit large and there's going to be mass layoffs across the country,
Do we want to take this risk?
Is this applicant that two people in the automotive industry want a mortgage, and we project, because they're all about projecting, they have economists in their back pocket for these big massive banks that Canada has, is right, they're taking the risk too.
Yeah, that's true. And I think like we're talking about this and stuff like that, but so did you see, so Dougie won the Ontario election.
Yeah.
We saw Dougie,
Yeah.
like he's my friend. 45%
Dougie.
45% went out and voted. Like
Yeah.
if that happens in the federal election, like that's just so sad.
Yeah.
45% of people, that's it.
Well, it's a test. It also shows that people have lost their passion.
Yeah.
That's what it said to me, is that even if you were conservative and you wanted the Conservatives to win, I think that people are just like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place for Canadians to be,
No.
because Canadians are passionate and they love their, sports. Like the amount of passion that came
From the hockey game. That's what I said.
I haven't
Yeah,
seen
remember?
Canada like everyone was.
It was electric. Yeah.
Right, and it's like, wow, like people
Yeah.
are happy, and
We still have that in us.
We have it in us, but people don't want to leave their house. It's been a really bad winter.
Yeah.
Let's just put it out there.
But like financially too, and
financially,
it's
everything.
tough.
And
Yeah,
so
everything's
people
expensive.
used to 45% is such a bad turnout, and I hated to see it, but it just also speaks to what we've been saying, is that the sentiment is not healthy and happy, which is sad. But we do have room to grow. Like that's the other thing. If we do change governments and these, energy gets tapped into more, and we figure this out with Trump, Canadians have a lot of
we have a lot to give. Yeah. Like there's a lot that we can do as a country, and you're so right. Like even like I just said, let's get rid of the interprovincial tariffs. Like let's get more markets where remember the liquefied natural gas that Trudeau said there was no business case for? Then Japan gave $1 billion to the US for the same product that we could have shipped out at the time. Like that's so many jobs we just lost out on. Like, let's cut that. Let's stop doing that. Let's think about how we can get people working and productive. And then if we have an abundance of jobs, if even Pierre came on, and even Pierre is giving a speech too, which is just there's so many different directions. It just shows how messy our politics are. But Pierre was like, let's get rid of these tariffs. Let's get homes built. Like, let's get rid of all this red tape. We can get young men and women working. And let's get pipelines built while this is all happening. And we'll figure out what's going on with the states while we still work on ourselves. Like even during that month pause, like there wasn't much talk of getting rid of the tariffs interprovincially. Like, why didn't we get rid of that? Why didn't we get back to Parliament? There's just so many things where we just expected him not to put tariffs on, and here we are just kind of scrambling, which is sad.
With the premiers of the provinces have more to say about the interprovincial tariffs, right? Because that's a revenue stream, let's call it, for Ontario, which Doug Ford would then allocate to whatever. So that, like we were talking about with Bonnie, that revenue would need to be made up somewhere. So
it's probably not as easy as I'm making it seem, but
right.
We need more talks about it, obviously. So anyways, all right, last one here. BMO forecasts interest rate to drop to 2% by July if the tariffs go into effect, which they did. So economists with BMO have revised their interest rate forecast to reflect the impacts of North American trade war and are calling quarter-point cuts at the Bank of Canada for the next 4 meetings, which brings the policy rate down to 2% by July. The net risk is that we eventually go even lower if the Bank of Canada is comfortable with the prevailing inflation backdrop later this year, wrote BMO economist Douglas Porter. Before today, BMO is forecasting that the policy rate would be 2.5% at the end of the year. Currently sits at 3%. So they're looking to drop the rate by a whole 1%. And yeah, I think I said it on the show too. Not financial advice, but if you are looking to renew and your fixed rate is very close to your variable rate, you could consider taking a variable rate right now.
Yeah.
If this trade war continues on, or even if the worst case scenario, there's 2 cuts. Obviously, talk to your mortgage broker about it and somebody you trust in the banking system, because I am not a mortgage broker.
It's just
And
good
if
to
it,
run both scenarios, right?
yeah,
And then just
yeah,
factor in your risk, right?
there's
Factor
risk.
in,
We've seen what happened during COVID.
yeah, and fixed rates, typically if you have to sell, like there's a mortgage penalty, like just work with a broker. My
Who knows what
sister's a
they're talking about?
broker.
Yeah.
She can help you.
Even ask
Just run.
ChatGPT, what should I ask a
Yes.
mortgage broker about
Yes.
my
Run both options
It's-
5 years down the line.
yeah,
Because one will stand out to your both risk comfort level and your current financial lifestyle. One's going to stick out. And that's why it's so divided. Some people stick with variable and some people love fixed. That's why
yeah,
both products are available. They're attractive to different people.
yeah. And I know this has been a very pessimistic show, but I do believe that like we are at the bottom of like productivity in Canada, and
Oh,
we can
yeah.
only go up.
And I keep saying that to the
Yeah,
team too, is that, the market's not great right now. The sentiment isn't fun. But that changes. It does. And it can change quite quickly too.
there's a saying, tough times make tough people.
It does.
So.
You get through this. They said survive till 25. Remember that? That they didn't say which month. Like
Yeah.
it could very well be September
or December
2025.
31st.
Yeah. But no, I do see things just starting to get better toward the Q3, Q4. People just starting to actually have hope again.
For
Just
sure.
when things settle down a little bit with the trade wars, with the politics, and kind of know where things are going. But I think that it'll be a slower spring. The weather should increase people's,
Yeah. Should get more people out there.
Yeah.
But in turn, it's going to put more listings on. So I think that if you're realistic on your price and your marketing is really good right now, your house is going to to
Yeah, do good marketing.
Yeah. Like I just got my bill for
man,
an upcoming listing
Yep.
and my staging, and I'm like, oh my God. But anyways,
Yep.
it's the investment you got to make. But yeah, I think that at the end of the day, we're going to get an election, which is what everybody wanted. And whoever gets in power has a clear mandate to focus on Canadian productivity. So, what do I hope? I hope that it is Pierre and his cabinet. But if it is not, I have to live with that because we live in a democracy and that's the way it is. So, yeah, I think that let's get more homes built. Let's support Canadian businesses as much as we can. Like go out and spend if you have to on Canadian products and use a good friend service if you can. And yeah, let's keep this thing rolling. Hopefully we have better days ahead, but
days ahead.
yeah, true. I think Trump is making an announcement tonight about all this tariff stuff.
We'll follow it.
Yeah, we will definitely follow it. So we appreciate you guys so much. You got anything else to add?
That's all.
We hate to ask, but we are a Canadian business. If you guys want to work with me and Brooke and you live in Hamilton, Toronto, surrounding areas, click that first link.
I think it's good if you want to work with us.
No, I
do
don't.
a good job.
It was just a selfless, shameless plug.
No, you do a good job.
We do a good job, and it's free.
You'd be doing a disservice if you did not work with us.
There you go. That's a great one. So yeah, if you guys do want to work with us, honestly, the call is free. We just go over what we offer, and you decide if it's the right fit for you. So you got nothing to lose. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week, and hopefully we have better news next week. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.